Hello, John Talley here with Partzilla.com. Today I'm going to show you how to replace the clutch pack on our 2008 Kawasaki KLR 650R. Pretty simple procedure, just involves dropping out the oil and the coolant, pulling the side cover, and then getting the new plates installed. So really not that tough. Let me go grab a couple of tools and I'll show you how to get it done. Alright guys, this is going to be a skill level 2, but just barely a 2, so don't be afraid of this one. Alright, let's go over some of the tools that we're going to need to get this done. First off, you're going to need a pretty good array of different sockets. On the 1/4-inch side, you need to at least have a 6 and an 8. On the 3/8 side, we need an 8, a 10, 12, 14, and a 17. You need a couple of different extensions for your ratchets, a couple of decent ratchets, and the only box end wrench you're going to need is a 12mm right there. A pretty decent gasket scraper, a pair of pliers, a dead blow hammer, and it's not absolutely necessary, but I recommend you have a torque wrench. So, if you would, go look at our diagrams, get an idea of how things are put together, get your parts list together, get that ordered. So once you've got all that together, we can get started. Alright guys, before we start pulling all of this apart, what I want to do is go ahead and put the fiber plates in a container and go ahead and get them soaking in oil. What you don't want to do is put together what they call a dry clutch, because the way these operate, they actually need to be saturated with oil. Otherwise, they'll overheat and actually burn off this brand new material on these discs. So let's get them into this little tray. We're just going to use some regular Kawasaki 4-stroke engine oil, let them soak for a good 30 minutes. That ought to give us plenty of a window for them to get soaked and give us time to pull all of this apart. Alright guys, before we start pulling all this apart to get to the clutch plates, we need to get this outer cover removed. Then we can go ahead and drain the oil as well as the coolant. So let me get that out of the way. It's just held in by 4 8mm head screws. Then we can start dropping the fluids out of it. Alright, before we start draining the radiator fluid, let's go ahead and take the cap off so it'll go ahead and free flow out of there. It's on the left side of the front of the tank. Alright, let's go ahead and get that radiator fluid drained out of there. Alright, want to make sure you don't lose your little crush washer. Make sure that stays with your bolt. Alright, let's go ahead and put the drain bolt back in. Let's get the drain bolt pulled. Go ahead and break it loose, and then get our pan under. Go ahead and loosen up our cap. And take it out. And don't drop your crush washer. Go ahead and put the plug back in now that that's drained. And don't forget to tighten it up. We can start with the actual brake pedal. Before we remove it, there's a very fine mark on the pivot shaft pointing up to a dot right here. I'm going to go ahead and highlight it by putting another black mark on it so we can get that back in the same place. And get that brake light switch spring out, and then we can remove that bolt that's holding on the brake lever itself. Alright, it's probably not absolutely necessary, but I'm going to go ahead and remove this foot peg just to give me a little bit more working room. Alright, next, let's go ahead and get the clutch cable disconnected. It's got just a pinch bolt on it. Then back that other side up. Now, we should be able to bring the cable through on the back side, like that. Alright, just tuck it up out of the way. Alright, now let's go ahead and get the radiator hoses removed. Both of these are just 6mm clamps. Alright, now that we've got our radiator hoses disconnected, let's go ahead and pull the oil filter cover, get the oil filter out of there. Alright, let's go ahead and get this cover pried off. This is a little pry point right here. Don't get too carried away with it and snap it off, but that'll open it up enough to carefully get a screwdriver on the edge. There she comes. And then slowly work it off. All right, we got our oil filter out. Let's go ahead and get that impeller housing off. probably won't have this extra scaffolding around. I'm going to try to leave it in place on this particular machine. I think I can work around it. All right, let's see if this thing's going to turn off. There we go. All right, and there is a small washer inside of here, so do not lose that one. Now, let's go ahead and start removing all these 10 millimeters that are holding our cover on. When I have this many to pull off, sometimes, depending on the machine, there'll be different lengths. So I usually pick a point like this and start laying them left to right. That way you're not searching back and forth to try to remember where they went. Let's see if we can get that thing to pop loose. I was actually taking the punch tool and I tapped here first and then I tapped over here. It's like most of the gasket material came off the actual crankcase, so it's going to be on this outer case. All right, let's go ahead and take our clutch springs out, and then we'll start removing the plates. You want to do this in a crisscross pattern, a couple turns at a time. All right, let's start pulling them out. Notice that this last one is actually rotated by one tooth, so we want to make sure we put it back together like that. Now, if this clutch were in trouble, these metal discs, they'd have blue spots on them from it getting too hot, and your fiber disc would be worn almost flat. You can see how you've got these little sections through and a little divider in between. When they're completely worn out, all of that's been scrubbed away. The other place you want to look for wear is actually on the clutch basket out here. You can see where they're starting to get a little bit of wear. But as long as you don't have these huge steps along here, you're fine. The other place you want to look is on the inner part of the basket. Make sure that those aren't too pronounced as well. So with that, let's go ahead and get our set together and start reassembling it. It's just alternating in between the fiber and the metal all the way out. And on this particular pack, all the fibers and all the metals are the same part number, and there's no in or out, so they make it really easy. And this last one, remember, it's off by one tooth. So, right there. Got a little pull pin back in place. Slide that back on. Yeah, these springs, they can go in either direction. They're actually the same, in or out. I've seen some of your sport bikes where the bottom or the part that goes into the clutch first, those windings are a little bit closer and they get a little bit more spread out as you go to the end. But these, they're the same all the way through, so it doesn't matter which direction they go in. All right, I want to take these back in, crisscrossing as you go. And once we bottom them out, then we'll torque them down. And it's 87 inch-pounds, which translates to 7.2 foot-pounds. When you're doing one that has this low of a reading, you want to keep your hand off the extension or the ratchet itself. Otherwise, it'll skew it. Now, here comes the fun part. Need to go ahead and get the rest of that gasket material scraped off. So give me a few minutes to do that, then we'll go through the process of reassembling all this. All right, guys, as we're cleaning off all this gasket material, there is a screen right here in the cases, and now is an excellent opportunity to take a peek at it, make sure there's no metal shavings, but we definitely want to take the opportunity with this, this cover off to go ahead and clean that off. All right, we've got our gasket material all cleaned off, so let's start reassembling this. First, let's go ahead and get our dowels back in. Don't forget to get your little screen back in there. Now let's get our gasket in place. All right, when we go to put the cover on, looks like everything's lined up pretty well up top, but we're going to need to push up just a tick on the bottom because this is such a large gasket. All right, before we set that on, let's put a little bit of grease on that impeller shaft. When we want to have our clutch arm pulled back, because see, that's with it engaged right there. We want to bring it back to about right here. That way, when we put it on, it'll come in and actually grab this pin. So that's where where we need to start it, right here. Yeah, she's got it. All right, now let's start putting our bolts back in. And remember, we started with this one. All right, next let's go ahead and get our impeller back on. Put a little bit of grease on the back side of this impeller, just on this O-ring right here. When you're putting it back on the shaft, it was pretty much the exact opposite of the way we pulled it off. In the beginning, you want to screw it on, and once it gets past the threads right there, then you can go ahead and press it. And you can feel that spring in the back, which is part of that seal. Now, we can go ahead and get on this outer washer. And the torque spec on this is 87 inch-pounds. Now, to get it to torque, what we need to do is actually put it in gear. That'll keep it from actually turning. Now we can go ahead and put on that outer cover with our new gasket, and the dowel pins actually stayed with the cover. The longer one goes to the top right. There we go. Let's get our radiator hoses back on. Next we can go ahead and get our oil filter back in it. I want to make sure this the smaller section actually goes to the inside. Your filter is non-directional. And your arrow should be going up. All right, let's go ahead and get our brake lever back on. Yeah, that looks like it. And get our foot peg. It probably wasn't necessary to take this off, but it seemed to be easier with it out of the way. Let's go ahead and get this brake switch spring back in place. Now we can go ahead and reconnect the clutch cable. This one looks a little rough, and I actually am going to replace this in another video. But for right now, I'm just going to go ahead and hook it up as it is. There she goes. Now, we can go ahead and grab the cable itself and loop it back into that clutch arm. There. Now, we can do our course adjustment down here. You want to get it close, but not too tight, and then do your fine adjustment up at the handle. That's actually pretty much dead on it. Glad we didn't go any tighter. I'm going to loosen it up just a little bit more, so it's got a little bit of play in it. Now, we can go ahead and get our cover back on. That pretty much wraps up our clutch install. Well, kinda. There's still a couple of more things that need to happen. One, we need to refill the oil in the machine. If you would, reference our oil change video for this particular model, and I can show you how to do that. Second thing is it needs to be refilled with coolant, and we also have a video for that. So if you would find that particular video, and I can show you how to get that done. Well, listen, if you need any of the parts that we use to do this clutch replacement, if you would, find us over at Partzilla.com and we can get you taken care of. If you have any questions or comments, if you would, just leave them in the section below and I'll do my best to answer them. Until next time, we just want to say thanks for watching.